Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. Coming to you from my house today. And we just taught this shawl, this lovely thing that I'm wearing, as a class last Saturday. And the edges of it, it's crochet. The edges of it, as well as the pockets, which I have not attached yet, have this really cool ribbing effect that is based on the concept of working in the third loop of a half double crochet. So today we're going to go over this, how to do it, how to identify the third loop and work into the third loop of a half double crochet. It's something that's pretty unique to a half double crochet, to have this extra loop hanging out underneath behind the top V of a crochet stitch. And when you work into it, it kind of forces the V that's the top to go front or back. And then you can see it running along the surface right here. And it can give you a really cool ribbed look. So let's get to it. So I'm going to do my best to explain how this all works. And one thing I should point out right now is working into that third loop is a little different if you're working in a circle on a piece or if you're working flat. And we're mostly going to be talking about working flat today. I might be able to point something out about working in a circle, but this is when you're flipping the work around, you're turning the work at the end of every row, what to do to recognize and work into the stitch again. And this pattern that we did this weekend at the shop is about continual rows. We'll show it to you again in a second, but continual rows of half double crochets into half double crochets into that third loop. Gives you something reversible and very cool. All right, so just to go over some basic terminology, we're talking about working into the third loop on a half double crochet. And that is often abbreviated as an HDC, a half double crochet. How a half double crochet differs from a double crochet, it's the same. So this is like a double crochet. You yarn over the hook before the stitch starts. There's some prep work involved, just like a double crochet. However, it's different from a double crochet in that once the loop is pulled up from the fabric, we'll go over when we do it with yarn. Once you pull up a loop from the fabric, as all stitches pretty much need you to do, you yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. A double crochet, you would work sets of 2. A half double crochet, you go through everything. Once you've pulled a loop up from the fabric, you yarn over and go through everything. And what it does is it gives you a shorter stitch than a double, but it's got the twisties and the pretty stuff of a double. It also, that extra yarn over you did up here, gives you that extra loop on the back. So that's what I've written here. It creates an extra loop behind, while the work is facing you, it's behind the top V that all stitches have. All crochet stitches have a V writing along the top of them. And often you work by going under that top V to make your next stitch on the next row. Many times that V, it's really made up of 2 loops that are called the front and the back loop. So then this is an extra loop that's not part of what almost all other stitches, like a single, a double, those things have. So working into that loop, that third loop, can make the top V visible. It can turn it one direction or the other. It can make it visible on the front or the back of your fabric. Here's the thing that we may not have time to work on both today. When you're working in the round, when you're just going in a circle, when you continually go in a circle, that third loop is always behind, and you work into it from the top down. You kind of push through from the top down and pull fabric, pull loops up. We're not necessarily going to talk about this one today because the pattern that my class worked on Saturday, and that I'm addressing today is about it working it flat. When you work across a row and then you turn around and you work back across the top of the row. When you turn the work, that third loop moves from being in back. When you flip it around, then it's in front. And it is usually worked bottom up. I'm going to show you in the drawings what that means, and I'm also going to show you with yarn and fabric what that means. So let's take a look. The first thing I did over here, when working flat, we have to talk about the front of the stitch and the back of the stitch. So I wanted to try to show you in pictures, in drawings, how a half double crochet compares to a double crochet. Again, a double crochet is taller because working sets of two, there's extra loops involved in a double crochet. Some things that are similar, though, that we can talk about is when you're looking at the front, when you've just made it, the tops of them will look very similar. We will have the front loop on both, and we will have the back loop of this top, what often looks like a V when you're looking straight down on it. They both have a front and back loop that makes up the top of it. However, the double crochet, because of the extra twisties, has more of what we would call the post, and it almost looks like the letter P when you're looking at it from the front. Things are a little more squished. The half double crochet is shorter. And this bottom piece that hangs off to the side more of the double crochet, we're going to look at this little bit that we can see here. That's actually the third loop. It won't show much on the front when you're making it. Let's make it purple, that little third loop. When you turn the work around, this is where the half double and the double become even more distinct. The double has extra things going around, so we have a really clear visible hole, but we can only see the back. That back loop kind of becomes a front loop. Let's tackle that a different day. But of this top V, when you turn it around, on both of these, you can still see part of that top V. But it's only on a half double crochet that it still looks like there is a V facing you, and that is made by the third loop. The bottom part of that V is your third loop. It is only on the half double crochet. It still looks like a V on what is facing you. The double crochet, there'll be a hole where you usually do your stitch, but you won't have a clear third loop that crosses in front of the whole entire thing. There'll be all kinds of extra bubbles and things keeping the bottom of this stitch, this top opening, from looking like something you can actually work with. A lot of times for a double crochet on the next row, you go right into the center. On the half double crochet, there is a whole extra loop stretching across the whole stitch when it is facing you when you turn the work around, the back of the stitch. So briefly, since I wanted so much space to be designated for what these stitches look like, I have some scrunched in pictures here to talk about how to do a new half double crochet in a half double crochet from the row below. So here's step one, prepping with the yarn over before we start. And I just want to show on this half double crochet, we still have one of our top loops visible. And here is the third loop that we want to go into to make this work. Now, one of the things I want to be really clear about is going into the third loop. A lot of crochet stitches, you're going under the whole entire top V, which is 2 strands, and it keeps the fabric more, gives it more strength and more stability. Only working into the third loop is going to pull that third loop pretty loose. So if things feel really loose while you're working that, that's okay. That's because we're only going under one loop. That is going to happen. So I'm going to throw a few other colors in here so we can keep things straight. We start with a yarn over. Then we want to go into the third loop from bottom to top. So we're going to need to take the hook, and it is going to come around here, and it is going to go from in this direction. Under, bottom to top. We want to take the hook and go all the way from the bottom of this third loop up under it. What that's going to look like, once we do that, it's going to pull that third loop way up. So what we have on the hook right now is our original loop, our yarn over in orange, and the third loop, when you go from bottom to top under it, is going to stretch it out on your hook like so. Then you're going to do another yarn over. You're going to bring the yarn over the hook, and then the hook is going to duck back under what it's pulled through. On any stitch in crochet, that's what a lot of it is. When you go into the fabric, you yarn over and you pull a loop back under, usually only what you pulled under. When you pull, not to be confusing or anything, but once you pull that second yarn over back up, here's what it's going to look like. We have our first yarn over. That first yarn over before the stitch started will always be at a funky angle here. So we have our first yarn over. The second yarn over that was only pulled up through that loop, that third loop is going to be super stretched out. And guess what? Behind it, we're gonna see both of our top loops will kind of be forced in a funky direction here. They'll still be on the back side of the work, but you might actually be able to see them just a little bit. Now to finish the stitch, we need to do another yarn over. And we need to pull that through all 3 loops. What we're going to end up with is a bunched up stitch that has our yarn over from before we started, some of the that pull up loop that we did from the fabric, and the third loop from the row underneath is going to be pulled pretty, you might have a little gappiness in there, and that's okay. What it's done is it's taken the top V from the row below and turned it so it's now riding along the back side of the work. All that craziness, in case you're wondering where all the loops went, this helps with it. Let's see what happens when we do it with actual yarn. So here's my pocket with the V's that are running down both sides. Those V's are the top of each row. There's 2 rows in here, the top of this row and the top of the row 2 after it make these ridges. Same thing on the other side. Working flat, it means one top is pushed this way and the other top is pushed towards us. It gives us a waffling texture like this, a little bit of a back and forth texture. So many times to set this up, it's just doing a row of half double crochets. A regular half double is yarn over. I'm going into my chain here, pulling up a loop, yarn over and go through everything. Yarn over. I'm going into the back humps of my chain. You can go into the center, pull up a loop. Woo, see if I can get it without splitting my yarn. Yarn over and go through everything. If I do this all the way across, you can't do third loop on your first row. You need a row of half double crochets in order to make this work. So there might be a foundation or setup row before you start. I've got my really short row here. And if we look at these, I've got the top V on all crochet stitches on the row you just finished will be tilted towards you. Now if I tilt this over, there's a top V here. And if I keep tilting it, it looks like there's another V. That's what our third loop does, is it makes it look like we have a V here. And that middle strand can become part of the V on the back as well. So let's try turning this instead. Again, our top V is here, front loop and back loop. And when we turn it, I might do one chain to give me my height. It might look like, oh, we just got another set of V's. The top V's are actually tilted towards the back just a little bit. Here they are. So here is what was the back loop when it was facing us, is right where my thumb is. If I keep turning, it looks like that back loop, which is now in front, is the top loop of a new V, top and bottom. That bottom loop, that's our third loop. That's the one we want to work into. So if I back all the way up over, this little V hanging off, I call it like a little barnacle hanging off. That's the chain I just made. So there's not much to find right over here. This is my first stitch. I've got a post that is off to the right, and I have a V that's facing me. That really only happens with a half double crochet. This strand wouldn't go all the way across if it was a different stitch, like especially a double. This strand doesn't go all the way across. So if I want to do another half double into the third loop, I have my top and my bottom of these V's. So I'm going to yarn over my hook. I'm going to go way down here. Hold with your finger if you need to. Way down under so I can hit just this bottom loop. I'm going to go from the bottom to the top, yarn over again, and pull back just under what I pushed under, which was just one strand. Here's that where it's all pulling really loose. That's okay. I've got 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over again, and I'm going to pull through everything. That gives me the setup for my next row. Big twistiness, big pulled stitch. That's the one I just did. I don't want to go under that one again. I'm going to yarn over before I start. There's prep work in a half double. What's being pulled way up away from the fabric towards my knot I just made is not the one I want to do. I want to head to the next one, right above where my thumb is. I have another V facing me. I'm going to go way down, and I'm going to go bottom to top under just that bottom of the top V there. Yarn over and pull back under. Now I've got 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and go through everything. It pulls so you really can't see the top of anything. But our new row of half doubles, you don't see the top of the stitch from the row below. So if I yarn over, Here's where I'm going next, just to the right of my thumb. And I have the top V, if I turn, is all up there. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to hit the bottom of what looks like the V facing me. Bottom to top under just one loop. Yarn over and pull that yarn over back under, just what I pushed under. Now 3 loops, I'm going to yarn over and go through all of them. Here's my next one. Come way down, but we're still just dealing with the what's facing us. Bottom to top, pull back under, pull through, yarn over, pull through everything. That third loop gets pulled pretty big. That's okay. Here's that third loop again. I'm going to do a couple more, not saying anything. Here's the stitch I just made. One way this is different from a lot of regular stitches, a regular double crochet, we would put the hook in the middle of this V in front and try to go under that top V. We would push all the way to the back and grab a loop and finish our stitch. Here's how it looks different. I still have that third loop just hanging out under and my stitch is over it. This guy's very different than these. And if I turn around, we can see what I've been doing so far has put a row of V's running right along the front. And if I go all the way through from front to back of my fabric, it breaks that. We can't see that. That V running, the line of V's running horizontal across the surface. So I'm going to turn it back to where I was. I'm going to take that stitch out. We are not, it's really important to mention, we are not going from front to back of the fabric. I'm yarning over, I'm finding that bottom loop, that third loop, and I'm keeping on the front side of the surface. I'm going bottom to top. I'm pulling back under, yarning over and going through everything. Here's another one. I find for the last one, sometimes it's kind of hard to see what's going on here and find the third loop. It all just looks like a hot mess. Sometimes we just have to fudge this. I have 10 stitches on the bottom. And if I count my posts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 on top. So I need to find or create a third loop here and do my last one. And it might end up looking like it's super gappy over here, but that's okay. I'd rather have it be balanced and a little gappy on the end than be losing stitches as I work. So if I was going to start another row, chain 1 and turn, or turn and chain 1, either way. And see that row of V's it made across the front. It's kind of fun. Let's come back up here. I'm going to yarn over before I start. I'm going to find the first V that's facing me, and the bottom part of that is my third loop, so I can go under and push from bottom to top, keeping it on the front side of the work, yarn over and pull a loop back up, yarn over and go through everything. Yarn over to start my next stitch. The next V that's facing me, I'm gonna go way to the bottom of it, push from bottom to top under just that bottom loop, yarn over and pull back up, yarn over and go through everything. And I'm gonna continue that whoop, all the way across. Now sometimes, like just happened to me, You may find that you're going under the whole V that's facing you. That's too much. If it's just the third loop, it's just this bottom one. And you keep going across. Yes, it does stretch out that loop, but that's okay. Because when it settles over time, it looks really cool. Remember this last one, I have to fudge something a little bit. So now I've got my row that I did down here, and what I just did, put a line on this side. And if I keep going, I'll end up with this. On the main body of the Hands in My Pockets shawl, it's got that on the edge and then a different stitch in the center, so that the two edges have some ribbing to keep the edge looking nice. So thanks again for joining us on how to do half double crochet in the third loop. It really is a specific thing to half double crochet. It's hard to have that clear third loop. You can have on other patterns, they might tell you back loop only. And then they're talking about this top V. I've done a video on that one. This is the third loop, which is a little different, working it round or flat. Like going in circles is not what this video addressed. Going back and forth flat is what this video addressed. If you'd like to see one on the third loop in the round, let me know in the comments. I'll try to add it to the queue, to the list. I have a lot of videos I'm attempting to work on. I'm finding that one every week sometimes is challenging, so sometimes it'll be one every couple of weeks for this channel moving forward. I'll do as many as I can for you all, though. I do love keeping your crafting journey going. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing to this channel. We have memberships of different monthly amounts if you'd like to financially support the work that we're doing at Sun Dragon and on this channel. Not necessary. A thumbs up, a comment, so many things help the YouTube algorithms know what's going on and help spread the word to more people that this channel is here and we're here to help. So, as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. How are we gonna do today? You gonna behave? Yeah? Yeah. That's gonna be fun, isn't it? Yeah. Let's see if you show up on camera today.